Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Bearean Bunker Broadcast, episode 82. And thank you for coming along and checking out our little corner of the world where you too can understand the Bible, because your Father is not a trickster. So today we are going over 2 Corinthians. Paul writes another letter to those naughty little Corinthians, and in this letter he is encouraging, and there's some heartfelt stuff from him, and he's just a passionate man, and these people are like his children because he brought them into faithfulness to Yeshua, and he's trying to bring them back in time, back into the Abrahamic covenant. And so here we go. So we've got some summaries. We read 1 through 4, encouragement through hardships, Paul's change of plans, and Paul's change of plan. In the second chapter, forgive the repentant sinner. And then he goes on to say, revealing Messiah's fragrance, a new covenant on hearts of flesh, and in chapter 4, we have treasures in jars of clay. We're jars of clay. Are we bringing the appropriate treasures?
And he's the potter, right?
He is the potter. So, observations.
So an observation I had was chapter 2, which I read. There was a lot of sorrow. Sorrow this, sorrow that. And it was kind of confusing me because it was just kind of seemed like he was saying it back and forth, back and forth. So I was asking you about it. And I'm like, what is with all this sorrow? And you explained to me that the people in Corinth, so last time he had been there, or the last letter he had sent, he had been really hard on them and correcting them, and he didn't want to come in sorrow again.
Right.
And then you gave a really cool analogy.
Right, I did.
Excuse me.
I did do that, and it was given to me by our situation on here. See, you'll notice that a lot of the pictures that I put on my bumpers are very similar. We live in a very small world. Our house is no basement, no attic, and what you see behind us is about what our house is. Minus like the kitchen corner and whatever. So we have this little small world. And then out in our yard, we've got a lot going on. We have, chickens and ducks and things of this. And we've had some incidents with dogs. And today, so Paul is writing a heartfelt letter to the Corinthians, and he has sorrow for them. And he's not writing this in light of you reading it 2,000 years later. He's writing it to his people, and he's just like passionate for care for them, and he doesn't want to give them sorrow, but he needs to give them sorrow, and he doesn't find joy in it. He finds sorrow giving them sorrow, but it's a necessity because he needs to tell them how important it is that they change their way and start looking toward the Father. And at the same time, we have dogs outside, puppies outside that are untrained. And what were they doing?
Well, so we have a 7-month-old puppy. That's definitely still a puppy. And we've been training her to be a guard dog. And we've had a couple incidents with chickens because they have to be trained, doesn't matter what kind of dog they are. And so I'm trying to keep a really close eye on her and make sure she doesn't get carried away with the chickens. Then our daughter moved home partially, and she has a German Shepherd puppy. And so they are out there playing, and we have ducks outside the door, and is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, so that was what was going on. There was dogs running back and forth.
And why were you worried?
Because I don't want them to eat the birds.
Has that ever happened?
Yes. Not these ones, but well, Tilly partially ate a bird.
She probably killed it.
Well, we thought that she had killed that one chicken.
Yep.
And then she was in shock and she came back to life. But anyways, she's got...
But that one, she was chewing on that head that one time?
That's right. That was a long time ago, yes.
So, I was not caring as much because I was trying to prepare for this and I had my mind somewhere else. And Rachel was imploring me to get to care, and she was so frustrated because I wasn't caring as much. I was kind of hard-hearted about it, blow it off. And I don't know why, but for some reason while we were reading, I looked out the window and I see the older pup, which is now 70 pounds of dog, standing at attention looking into the distance, and it could only mean bad. In my mind, that's just bad news if the dog is focusing on something and I don't know what it's focusing on, and I know it has a track record. So I got paranoid and I'm like, I ran out there and did stuff. And then I came back in and everything's fine with her, but I came back in and I told my wife, I said, you've now made me paranoid. And she's like, good. And she was so happy that I was paranoid. I mean, it was just a word, not paranoid. But
attentive.
I am attentive, right? So I am attentive to what my wife's concerns were. So my wife is Paul in this analogy. My wife is Paul and I am the Corinthian church. And she was just like frustrated because I was not seeing the importance of really getting at the dogs. So that's my little analogy for 2 Corinthians chapter 2. Paul was full of sorrow because he was struggling to want the Corinthians to have the same sense of urgency and passion and sacrifice that he had.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about.
So now you care.
Now I care. Now I care a lot. Now I'm like infused with care.
Because what was the line you said that got you? What did I say?
Oh.
I had said to you, well, if the chickens die, it'll be your fault.
Yeah. And at first, right. And at first I'm like, I mean, yeah, anybody who's been married for 20 years and somebody says stuff like that, you're like, oh yeah, whatever. It's my fault. Everything's my fault. Why would it not be my fault? A lightning could burn the house down and somehow be my fault. And then I was just thinking, the spirit of what she was saying was, you're not joining me in caring about the situation. I'm caring about the situation. So I was not treating her as an important partner in the... See, all these relationship things boil down to, is there communication? Is there a covenant relationship? Is there a mutual care? And then the physical teaches the spiritual. Okay? Yahweh wants you to care as much as him about the people. Well, first of all, about his laws, his covenant, his relational requirements. Just like a vow, when you get married and you are marrying your wife, you're not just like saying the vows so you can get to the honeymoon. You are making a contract and a covenant with your wife to care about what she cares about, to live how she wants to live within reasons. But that's why Paul was saying in 1 Corinthians 7 that men should stay single, because when they get married, they start caring for what? The
Other
things of
things.
other things, the things of this world. There's no sin, he says. He's very clear. You're not sinning by getting married, but you're complicating your life. So this was a little snapshot into something my wife legitimately, totally cared about that I was not caring about. And Paul was saying this to the Corinthians: you need to care about what I care about, because this is the honor, this is the glory, this is the covenant of faithfulness. And then he goes on to explain in chapter 3, this is a covenant renewal. In chapter 3. He says, and such we trust we have through the anointed, who is Yeshua, toward Almighty. This is verse 4. Not that we are sufficient in ourselves to regard anything as coming from ourselves, but our sufficiency is from the Almighty. The Spirit brings it to us, who also qualified us as ministers of the covenant renewal. The covenant renewal is Yeshua ratifying the blood covenant to get us back to Abraham, which was a covenant of faith. Abraham had a covenant of faith. Okay, and then he goes on to compare it against, because when there is glory in the ministry, okay, he was talking about, verse 7, but since the ministry of death, which is the Levitical covenant, sentences had been getting inscribed on stones was produced in glory. God built it, but it was produced by God, ministry of death, so that the sons of Israel could not look steadfastly at the face of Moses because of the glory in his face, fading as it is. But so why shouldn't the ministry of the Spirit be more glorious? Because when there is glory in the ministry of condemnation, which is the Levitical covenant, how much more exceeds the ministry of righteousness and glory, which is the Abrahamic covenant? Blah, blah, blah. So that's the big thing, is caring about God's covenant. And on earth, if you're married, caring about the covenant you made with your wife, because that is the most important covenant a man's going to make, besides the covenant of faithfulness to Yeshua, is the covenant he makes with his wife at the altar. And quite honestly, between the systematic theology and the men in the last 1,500 years, we're lazy at both. When you get lazy with the scriptures, you're going to get lazy with your wife. And then you're left with whoever, personality, whatever, personal morals, philosophies.
So that's too also where it comes down to make sure you care about the same things.
Yeah, before you get married.
Because you can think.
And then I just dominated the whole
That's
conversation.
okay.
Again.
No, that's right. That was your observation.
Oh,
crash. Puppy crash.
So we have a gate that, as you can hear, the quality just rings like crystalline, and this, in the bell chapel. And then that's my daughter properly training her puppy. So, as a final observation, we will go to chapter 4 of Corinthians, and once again, I will show that Paul is preaching out of the scriptures. And the scriptures are not his own letters. The scriptures are the Tanakh, the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms, Proverbs. In this case, in verse 13, in chapter 4, but having the same spirit of faithfulness. Well, that couldn't have been in the quote-unquote Old Testament, which was a term made up by a monk. According to what has been getting written, he says, from Psalm 116, I have pledged faithfulness, therefore I have spoken up. We also pledge faithfulness. Therefore we are also speaking up, who having been known, who raised Yeshua Messiah, will also raise us with Yeshua and will present us with you. Because all these things are for you, so that loving kindness, having abounded unto many, may increase the blessing for the glory of the Almighty. So blessings are for the glory of the Almighty. Our job here is to fulfill our pledge of faithfulness, just like your job as a husband is to fulfill your pledge of faithfulness to your wife. That's all I got.
That's wonderful.
So that's 1 Corinthians 1 through 4.
2 Corinthians.
Oh, sorry, 2 Corinthians 1 through 4.
Yep. And guess what's happening today?
What is happening today?
We're having some grandbabies delivered. Yep. So we're going to have, our daughter is having twins today.
I'm going to be a grandpa again today.
So it's a big day. So I'm a little tiny bit distracted.
Yep.
Still pretty excited.
All right. Well, that's a big deal.
Yes. What are you going to do?
I'm going to go, I think I'm going to jackhammer up a sidewalk, and I might cut some stuff and have some fun.
That sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's the thing. As we sign off, the whole Yeshua, our Messiah, Jesus Christ, primary objective, if you want to boil it down to one phrase, he wants to rush us forward into the past. He wants to get us back to Eden. Yahweh's objective is to get his sheep, get all the people that want to, and get them back to the Garden of Eden and have absolute fellowship forever and ever and ever. That's the job. You guys have a great, blessed day. Bye.